What up, guys? Welcome to the Son of Wonder. I've officially finished the new Star Wars series, Skeleton Crew, so let's conversationalize. What up, guys? So, Skeleton Crew. I've seen it. I've seen the whole thing. I had reviewed the first 3 episodes. Now I've seen the rest of the series. I was planning to do reviews of like another group of episodes, then another group of episodes, but then the whole series happened, and I just watched the rest of it. So now I'm going to review the whole rest of it. The whole thing, really. Just the series as a whole, what I think of it. Yeah. Well, here's the deal. I thought when I saw the first 2 episodes on their own, I thought that was like one of the worst Star Wars things I'd ever seen. So, my confidence going into the series was, the rest of the series was none. And then I saw the 3rd episode, and I thought it was slightly less smelly garbage. Slightly less smelly. But still smelly garbage. Then I saw the 4th episode. That happened. I watched it, and it was just as smelly of garbage as the first 2 episodes. So, then I watched the rest of the series. And I ended up getting more like complex thoughts on it as it went along instead of it just being terrible. Like there were more things that I was liking. I felt like there was a little bit more of some development, some character development. But overall, full no. I am going to be getting into spoilers, so you've been warned. But yeah, so this series, I mean, it's no secret that Star Wars has sucked lately. So, you know, any confidence in any new Star Wars project now, I basically have none. And when I heard this series, this series was announced like forever ago, and so, you know, I had more faith in it then than by the time it actually came out. And you know, the guy who directed the Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy produced this series. You know, it seemed like he was a pretty crucial part of the making of this series. So that gave me a little bit more faith, a little bit. And, you know, watching it, it was a pretty big disappointment. And here's what I'll say. I need you guys to pray for Jude Law, because I heard the other day that he was rushed to the hospital for a spinal fracture from having to carry this show until the end. From having to be the anchor, the only thing that made this show remotely tolerable as it was going on. Because, dear gosh, second of all, Jude Law needs to fire his agent. Because he himself, as an actor, did a great job with this show. He acted well. Anytime he was on screen, he had a certain level of charisma, and it made the character that he played fun to watch on screen. And it's about where it stopped. Because as far as character consistency, as far as character development, as far as things in the plot to make the story go forward, all of that was just full no. And the biggest glaring issue here is that the main characters of the show, the kids, the 4 kids, Fern, KB, Neil, and Wim? I'm thinking I'm correct on that. The 4 main characters of the show, I don't think any of them are super likable. I think one of them in particular, Fern, is quite unlikable. And I think that none of them, if I'm being honest, I don't think these are the greatest kid actors. I didn't think the acting was great. If I'm being honest, again, this is nothing against the actors themselves. I'm just saying I don't think the acting was very good. But I mean, at the same time, you can only act as good as the characters are written, and I don't think they were written very well at all. I mean, for the first half of the series, they're very just one note. Each one has their own specific thing that you know about them, and that's kind of it. And I would say for the second half, they do a better job at progressing some of their arcs and some of their stories and learning a little bit more about them. But at the end of the day, it just felt like it's just one of those stories that I've liked less and less as time has gone on, where, you know, there's a whole episode where the kids, you know, they kind of have arguments with each other, and by the end of it, it's all like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Blah, 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 blah. And it just feels so just like melodramatic. And there's a way to do stories like that are more compelling. And if anyone out there says, oh, well, it's a kid's show, you shouldn't be that critical of it. It's a show meant for children. No, that is not how this works. Because when I was a kid, I watched Batman the Animated Series, I watched Star Wars The Clone Wars, I watched Justice League, and those are all animated shows. Those are cartoons. Spectacular Spider-Man, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, all of those are like 8 to 10 out of 10 shows. And so there's no excuse. There's no excuse for any new show to be like, oh, well, we're just dumbing it down for the children. First of all, what does that say about how you think about children, that you feel like you have to dumb it down for them? Second of all, you're making a piece of media, you want it to be good, period. Like for anybody. I don't care who you're making it for. It doesn't just automatically lower the bar if it's meant for kids. If you set out to make a show, you need to set out to make a good one. That's just the general rule for anything that anyone makes. You want it to be good. And this show is just like, it failed on a writing level. Fundamentally, it failed on a writing level. And one of the biggest problems, I think, was the way they handled Jude Law's character. Because he is by far, like I said, the best part of the show. And, you know, they're trying to do all these things. They're trying to do some Treasure Island in there. It's inspired by the Goonies as well. They're trying to mix all of these different 80s things, put them together in this one show, and then put it in kind of the world of Star Wars, but not really. Not really. It's like, sort of. But that's kind of been the general problem with all the new Star Wars projects, is they all kind of feel like just space slop. It's not Star Wars anymore. It's just like, well, you know, it's in space and there are spaceships, but it never has the vibe of Star Wars, and this show certainly doesn't. I mean, you have this planet with friggin' suburbs. Suburban areas, neighborhoods, and like relatively normal schools and crap like that. And it's like, this is Star Wars. Under no circumstances should you ever put anything like that in Star Wars. Of all of the escapist media, it is arguably the most escapist. No real, and that's what I hated about Andor. People having freaking ties. No, that's not how this works. This is Star Wars. And it matters to the aesthetic of the world, of what George Lucas established in his first 6 movies. So this stuff matters to this universe, just like making sure Spider-Man is done right, making sure Iron Man is done right, making sure Batman is done right, and Superman is done right. The same way this matters to Star Wars. The aesthetic is one of the major things that makes Star Wars amazing. And they've ruined that in multiple projects now, counting this one. So they're trying to mix all these genres, and it could work. You could do like a pirate thing in Star Wars. I've actually wanted that before, but the way that they did it in this show, it's just, it doesn't work because the kids aren't good characters. At least I don't think so. I don't think they're charismatic. I don't really care about, like, their whole goal is getting back home. It's like, okay, cool. That's not like super great or compelling storytelling. It's just like, okay, whatever. It's the kids. They've left and they want to get back home. So much of this series, that's kind of the issue, is just a repeat of stuff we've seen in Star Wars media before. So much of it. It's the same plot lines. Somebody trying to get back home. Somebody trying to take this person to this specific place. This guy wants this thing. He's got to go get it. It's an important thing to him, blah, blah, blah. Like, it follows the same beats in so many manners. And specifically what I was going to say about Jude Law's character is that they build some level of intrigue over the course of the show. They build some level of intrigue about, like, who is this guy? Who is he? Is he really a Jedi? He can use the Force. It could be like a trick. Can he use the Force? Is he a Jedi? Blah, blah, blah. And he has some good scenes here and there. They're kind of building the intrigue. And then toward the end, I mean, this is what I would say is, it's kind of the biggest spoiler of the show, but not really, which is kind of my criticism about it, is he's the bad guy. He's the main bad guy. And what's hilarious about that is when they first announced that this show was happening, and it was going to be about a group of kid characters, and Jude Law was going to be another one of the characters in the show. As soon as they announced that, I was like, man, I really hope they don't make Jude Law like the bad guy. Like, make you think that he's going to be on the side of the kids and then make him the bad guy. That's exactly what they did. That is 100% what they did. And if they had done it maybe in a slightly different way, it might have felt better. But at the end of the day, it just feels like a massive waste of Jude Law's talent. A massive waste, because he is such a good actor. And he shows that in the show. It's just the writing of the character, the way they take the character, is just kind of, at the end of the day, pointless. Because he starts out in the show the exact same way he ends in the show. So there's really nothing happens to him. He does not change at all. There's no actual, character growth or character descent. He starts the exact same way. He starts as a ruthless pirate, he ends as a ruthless pirate. There's no anything. And you think that throughout the show they're trying to make you think, okay, maybe he'll be a good guy now. Maybe this time that he's spending with the kids will teach him more compassion and stuff like that, right? No. It's also inconsistent with his character because there are times throughout the series that he'll go out of his way to save the children. The children will be in some kind of peril, and he will save them. He doesn't have to save them. He does not need the kids to do what he wants to do. He wants treasure. And apparently the treasure is on the home planet of the kids. And so he wants to find the home planet of the kids so he can get the treasure. But he doesn't need the kids to do that. He has access to the ship that is required. He has access to the droid that is required. And he is an adult. He is more than capable of taking control of the ship and the droid and doing all of the stuff that he wants to do by himself. And yet, throughout the series, he's saving these kids, and then he ends the series with, he's threatening the kids' parents, when he finally gets back to their home planet. He's like, I will kill your parents. I will kill them right in front of you if you don't do what I say. Goes full villain mode, full evil, full threatening. And just sadistic and whatever. The treasure that he finds at the home planet is this Old Republic mint, they call it. So it's literally never-ending money. And honestly, it's very similar to if you guys didn't watch the show, I would not blame you at all. But in WandaVision, in the Marvel show WandaVision, came out in 2021. The villain in that one, spoilers for that show if you haven't seen it, but is Agatha Harkness. And they do a similar thing where they make you think that her motivation is kind of interesting. You don't really know why she wants to take Scarlet Witch's power, Wanda's power. You don't really know why she wants that. She might want it for a specific reason. And then in the finale, it's no, she just wants the power because she wants more power. The most basic possible villain plotline ever. And it's very similar with this one where it's you have a good actor. Catherine Hahn did a good job acting as Agatha Harkness. It was just the writing sucked. Same with this one. Jude Law did a good job playing this character, Jad Nana Wood. I don't love that name, but he did a good job playing this character, this, evil force-wielding pirate. But it's just the writing sucked. Because at the end of the day, it's exactly what you thought it was, where it's less okay, he wants the treasure. And again, it makes you think that there's going to be a little bit more to this, but now he wants the treasure. And so in the finale, they give you this really quick backstory for him. This really short, apparently when Jude Law's character was a kid, he had force sensitivity, but I guess he was poor, so Aladdin, he said all he cared about was not starving. And then apparently a Jedi girl found him and trained him for a second, and then the Empire came and killed her in front of him somehow, which what he doesn't explain is in the context of canon Star Wars, that if they killed his master in front of him, they would take him to probably become an Inquisitor eventually, or some kind of dark Sith acolyte or whatever. So they don't really explain how he got out of that situation. But that's it. That's his backstory, is another Jedi who was trained by an Order 66 survivor, which, how many of those are there now? Are out there now. Apparently Order 66 was not very good at being Order 66. And he was trained by an Order 66 survivor for a second, and then his master was killed, and then he's mad about it. We haven't ever seen that plot line before. That's never happened. This is entirely new and different. It's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again, because that's all they know how to do with Star Wars anymore, is to repeat the same crap over and over and over again, beat people over the heads with it until no one wants to experience it anymore. Because it's old. No one cares. You can't keep recycling the same crap. It may have worked in Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars for that first while, but after a while, it starts to stink. Especially when it starts to be written worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So, yeah. He could have been a great character. He could have been a compelling character. There could have been something interesting about him, but instead, they do the thing, they make you think, they make you question his motivations, question really what he really wants to do, and the final reveal is he's exactly what you thought he was. Fine. Whatever. And again, as for the stories of the kids, they got home. That's it. And honestly, a good summary of this show would be Disney Star Wars slop. The same stuff you've seen before. Almost nothing is new. It's presented as if it's in a new light. There are, I suppose, circumstantial things about the show that we've not exactly seen before. But I tell you what we have seen before is we've seen the show about the adult having to take care of the kid, in this case kids, going on a Star Wars adventure with the kids. We've seen that before. We have definitely seen that before. That is what Star Wars has been doing ever since the Clone Wars, if you really think about it, with Ahsoka. And if you want to say before that, you could say Phantom Menace with Qui-Gon taking Anakin in. We've been doing that a long time, and it's gotten worse over time. It was done well at the beginning, and then it was just like, no. And so now we have this entirely forgettable show that I probably won't ever watch again. I doubt many Star Wars fans will. I mean, in all honesty, it does seem to be more well-received by the fans than most of the other Disney Star Wars crap, which is not saying much at all. I mean, I suppose in relevance, it is better than Kenobi because of what the show did to Kenobi. It's better than Acolyte because of what that show did to frickin' Star Wars. I think it might be better than Andor just because I really don't like Andor. But I mean, again, this show is just a huge misstep, a huge miscalculation, and a huge waste of potential, I think. Because you really could have done something cool here, something more intriguing with Jude Law's character. I mean, Jude Law could have been like a full-blown Jedi or a full-blown Sith, you know? Like, of all things to cast him as, like you're casting him as a Force wielder. I mean, there's a lightsaber in the show. He wields a lightsaber. And that part of it is cool, but it feels like they do nothing really profound or cool with his character. And I would have much rather them just come out of the gate and said, okay, this is the villain of the show. He's going to be the bad guy. Instead of making you think, oh, he might do this, oh, he might do that. No, he's just an evil treasure hunter. And that's it. So yeah, if you haven't noticed, I don't like this show. And I think it was a massive waste of the potential it had and what it really could have been. And that is severely disappointing, but it is not surprising. This is Disney Star Wars we're talking about after all. So maybe one day they'll get their crap together, but I don't know if I see it happening anytime soon. We'll see. Maybe when Kathleen Kennedy is fired, or maybe when Star Wars is just entirely sold to another company or whatever. But let me know what you guys thought about the show down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And that's a wrap.